Hello and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to a Middle-earth-a-thon prompt recommendation video. Middle-earth-a-thon, if you don't know, is a read-a-thon from the 26th of August to the 2nd of September, all with different Lord of the Rings themes prompts in a lead up to the release of the Rings of Power TV series. We're really excited. We're hoping to host a watch along at some point, and I am the leader of the Witch Kings, thus making me the Witch Kings and you the Nazguls for one of the teams. And our prompts are varied, but you only have to read 3 books, so you get to pick which 3 of the prompts of the many prompts that we have. Today I will be focusing on the Witch Kings prompt, Powerful Patron. And this is where you have to read a book by one of the 5 top publishers, either in the UK or the US, depending on where you're at, or if you are somewhere else, 5 in the world is also fine. I realised almost immediately that this was a mistake. It was a prompt I chose, but it was a mistake, in that most of the bigger publishers have smaller imprints that I am far more inclined to buy from than just the standard big name. So I do have a few recommendations from each of the different ones, but really what we are asking you to do is to try and find one of these logos on the spine of your book and pick that for your TBR. One of the biggest publishers in the UK is Simon & Schuster, and I have 2 books by Simon & Schuster that I would like to recommend. They are very different, but I realised that Simon & Schuster was the one on my shelf that I have the least of, because they're kind of like, and you'll find this with like Hatchet, for example, they are a group, and whilst you will find their smaller imprints on your shelf, it's harder to find stuff with that specific logo on, or certainly for my shelves it was difficult. I'm clearly not giving Simon & Schuster enough of my money. So the first one is The Perks of Being a Wallflower. Now I want to recommend this one because it is a really short read, but also because we're Witch Kings and, you know, they're not the good guys. We need to lean into the pain and the sadness, the trauma, and that is exactly what this book is about. This follows a young boy who has been assaulted in some way, is dealing with trying to make new friends, and it's a very powerful and poignant novel. It is not for everybody, and I will leave the trigger warnings down below, but they are spoilers. Like, there are sometimes when I'm like, talking about trigger warnings isn't spoilers, they're not the same thing, but I feel like with this one it does, because of the sensitive nature of the topic of this book. It very much is. So I will leave that down below, but like I said, it's a really short read, and if you're looking to do multiple prompts, this would be my recommendation. If you're looking to do more than just the standard 3 that we're supposed to do, like having short reads on your TBR will definitely help you. The next by Simon & Schuster is Legendborn. I loved this book. This is an urban fantasy about a young girl called Bree. I genuinely thought I forgot her name then. A young girl called Bree who discovers that not only is there a secret Arthurian society full of magic at her university, she actually comes from one of the root magic witches from the area, and she starts by kind of investigating her mother's death because she doesn't believe it was an accident. She thinks she was murdered, and then kind of transforms into this Merlin and Arthur kind of retelling. And I really liked this. I really liked the mixture of magic in this. I really liked the banter between characters. There is a love triangle in this, and you know, that's either for you or you're not, like that's fine. But I actually really liked the way they played this, because it wasn't her stuck between 2 people kind of love. It was a whole thing, and you need to read it to like fully appreciate it and understand, but it's a really good time. Whilst it has the pacing of a YA, there are some adult themes in this. It just, yeah, it's a good time. I'm really looking forward to the sequel. However, having seen all the tweets about it, I'm more worried and scared than excited, but I'm sure it'll be great. So yes, that would be one of my recommendations. You are encouraged to read books by BIPOC and LGBT authors, and this is an own voices urban fantasy, so ticks that box. The only book I could see on my shelf that actually said Hatchet on it and not one of the smaller imprints is The Deathless Girls. This is by Kieran Millward Hargrave, and obviously ticks off both the prompts of BIPOC and LGBT books. And this is basically a retelling of Dracula that focuses on Dracula's wives, where they came from, and their kind of how they fell into his castle, basically. And it's a really interesting story. I love Kieran Millward Hargrave's writing style. I've read quite a few by her now, and this was just such a beautiful, powerful book. It is sad. It is like there are moments of real triumph. There's adventure. There is terror. Like it has everything in it. And I have the Waterstone Sprayed Edges one, which just feels really swanky. But anyway, that's just me bragging. That's not helpful to you. I just like pointing it out. Anyway, this has LGBT rep. There is a sapphic relationship in this. And yeah, I loved it. And having been to Romania as well, it just feels like I was there again. Like it was so good. So yeah, we definitely recommend putting The Deathless Girls on your TBR. Next is Penguin Random House. And I thought I would go for something different because I didn't want to be recommending the same books every single time. So I've got two very, very different books here. The first one we have is All Boys Aren't Blue, which is a memoir about a young gay man named George. Obviously it's the George M. Johnson is the author and memoirist. Autobiographer is probably the better. Anyway, and this is a really beautiful YA memoir about a young man coming to terms with his sexuality, as well as dealing with inherent racism and homophobia, and dealing with internalized homophobia with regards to how his cousin expresses themselves. Again, trigger warnings for sexual assault in this one. It becomes quite, it's a very interesting way that this is dealt with, because I am triggered by sexual assault, so I need those trigger warnings. But with this one, because it's YA, it is very kind of gently done. But if you're looking again for a short read and something that is a little bit different, I know that people recommend this left, right and centre, and that is because it is good. So if you need something from Penguin Random House, pick this one up. If you are looking for a bit more of a challenge, and you want something that is a fast read but maybe not a short read, I would recommend Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. Again, BIPOC and LGBT rep, much like the last one. It feels like a collection of short stories, but it is a narrative about a bunch of women and what it means to be a woman and the varying shades of womanhood that there are, from non-binary to trans to just cis. Do you know what I mean? Like there's such a variety in here, and they are all connected in some way. There are threads between these women, and it's a really fun read. It's really interesting because I've read other books by Bernardine Evaristo that are just sad. Like they have funny moments in them, but they're just sad. This is the other. This is a very funny book that then has sad moments and very poignant moments. But it's just generally a really good time. I really enjoyed it. And obviously it won the Booker Prize, so I feel like I rarely recommend Booker Prize winners because they're not a good time. They're usually really dry and boring and written by white men. So the fact that this is none of those things, you should definitely go and pick it up. It's a good time. Hashtag good time. I did that one just for you, Lizzie, because I know you're going to watch this later and you're going to be like, it's a good time again. Yeah, it's a good time. I'm recommending books. I'm trying to find new ways of saying they're a good time. That one really is a good time. Then I have two by Pan Macmillan, again very, very different. I have Uprooted by Naomi Novik that I'd be happy to recommend. It's really interesting because I didn't realise that the Deadly Education, etc. are by Del Rey, but Uprooted and Spinning Silver are by Pan Macmillan. It's not uncommon for authors to like move publishers, but it's just I hadn't noticed that before. And I'm sure Del Rey are probably like, they're probably like an imprint of this, but very specifically urban fantasy, whereas this is high fantasy. So this follows a young girl who lives in a village near a castle, and every year, every 5 years, a dragon comes down from the castle and steals one of the girls. Except he comes down, he sees if any of them have any magic, and then he takes them away to his castle. And you find out what his purpose of doing that is in this novel. In the meantime, there is a wood that is kind of encroaching on the village and the world in general and kind of spreading, and it is poisonous and it's toxic, and people that go in do not come out. And the main character of this is the only person known to kind of just wander in and out of the woods, and she kind of learns magic, and it's a really, really interesting novel. What I really liked about this one in particular is, considering it's about a wood slowly but surely taking over a realm, it kind of, the pacing is very, very slow. So you don't realise just how much you have sunk into this story until you're like halfway through and you're just like, oh my god, the book is the wood, like it's in me now, do you know what I mean? Like, and I really liked that. So if you're looking for something a bit gentler and slower paced, Uprooted by Naomi Novik is a good time. There it is again. I did it again. And then the other one is completely the opposite. Could not be more different, right? Blackwater Sister is a wild Malaysian urban fantasy about a woman who goes out to Malaysia with her family and then gets possessed and haunted by her grandmother, who has a very dark and sordid past. There is murder in this, there is gangs in this, there's like a whole bunch of shit. It is wild. And the first few chapters will lure you into a full sense of security. This is like a nice, gentle It isn't. It is not a nice, gentle read. It is a wild ride. It is wild. So yeah, this was actually one of the books that Olivia put in the Gothtober box last year. And that's why I picked it up in the first place, because she'd basically unintentionally recommended it to me by putting it in the giveaway box. And it was a 5 stars. It was absolutely fucking epic. So loved it. And then finally, the fifth-ish, I mean, like I said, Hatchet, I could only find one. The 5th largest, or one of the top 5 largest publishers in the UK is HarperCollins. And they are, again, an amalgamation of 100 different imprints. But trying to find one that specifically says HarperCollins on my shelves was actually easier than the others. And I had to narrow it down to these 3. So we have erotic stories for Punjabi widows. And I know what you're thinking. I know you're thinking, Hannah, what the fuck is that? Because that is what I thought when this was gifted to me. Someone saw this book and went, Hannah would love that. And you know what? Yunka, you were right. I fucking loved this. This is a contemporary novel about a young woman who comes from a very traditional Punjabi family, but she is not a traditional Punjabi woman at all. And she is very kind of modern, and she works at a pub, and she sees that there is a writing course that's going to be at her local temple, and she puts herself forward to teach it, thinking she'll be teaching creative writing and that she'll be teaching these women to tell their stories, except the Punjabi widows that are there cannot read or write. And what she's actually doing is kind of formulating this anthology of their stories and the stories they have about being wives and widows. And a lot of those stories are erotic, because something that these women learn very early on is how to kind of be a wife in the most physical sense. So it's a really interesting story. Again, it's very, very funny, but it has poignant moments. And there's like a random murder mystery, like in the middle of it, where a young girl has been murdered and everyone is trying to work out what is going on with that as well. So this book, much like a ogre, has layers. So would recommend. Next, something completely different. We have Ella Enchanted. Again, super, super short. This is a fairy tale retelling of Cinderella. You probably will have seen the film, right? The film was a good time. This is better. The book, I reread this year and was really surprised at how well it held up, because I've been putting off reading this book, thinking that because it's one of the ones that I loved as a child, I'd hate it now, because there have been quite a few books where that has happened. No, this one absolutely holds up. It is such a good time. The pacing is weird because it is older, right? So they don't necessarily care that 1 minute it's like, oh, and then a day passed, and then a year out of nowhere. Like, they don't really care about that, but it's still a really good time. The characters are really sassy, and it really... yeah, it has a lot of like really important themes in it as well, but just like subtly sprinkled in. And I really like the fact that Ella, because she's had this curse put on her, she has to follow an order if given a direct order, as opposed to just Cinderella doing it out of the goodness of her heart. Like this Cinderella feels more like a real person. I also really like that the romance between her and Prince Charming is actually like friends to lovers, as opposed to just like he met her one day and didn't recognise her. Like there's none of that bullshit. So yeah, really, really enjoyed it. And like I said, short. I did try with a lot of the recommendations, and I'm filming more recommendation videos today anyway. I did try to focus on short reads. That has not been possible for every prompt, but at least this one there's a couple. And then finally, because how could I not recommend a Katie Lowe book, we have Katie Lowe's The Furies. This is a dark academia witchy story. It's very creepy, it's very sinister, and I don't want to say any more about it than that because it's a good time. It's a good time. So yes, Katie Lowe, last but never the least in my heart. This is a 5-star recommendation if you ever saw one. But I assume you would like to know what I will be reading for this prompt. Or if you don't, that's fine, you can share the video here. But for my powerful Patron prompt, I will be reading Pages & Co. The Book Wanderers, which is the first book in the Book Wanderers series. I have every intention of recording my reaction to this one and maybe turning it into a vlog that could come out around Christmas anyway, because I'd like to do loads of like middle grade stuff around that time. I don't know a lot about this. I just know that everyone fucking loves it. and I'm excited for some adventure. I'm excited for a fast read because like the writing is big and like some pages are just straight up illustrations. So yes, this is one of the books that will be going on my Middle-earth-a-thon TBR. I will be TBRing a book for every single prompt, but I will be picking, once I've hit 3, I'll consider it done, and then anything else other than that is a bonus, is kind of how I'm viewing it. So let me know in the comments down below, what book will you be picking for Powerful Patron? Will it be one of my recommendations, or do you have a recommendation for one of the top 5 publishers' best books? Let me know in the comments down below. Other than that, treat yourself to something from Waypoint because it helps support me and my content. Make sure you are following all of the hosts of this event because we will be doing all kinds of fun stuff on Twitter, Insta, and over here on our YouTube channels. And other than that, have a nice day.